There was an almost identical picture taken in 1976 at Paso Fondo. Here you see the power lines as a single pole and only one power wire running on it with some telephone wires on the top. But the object is the same, flat black, fat lenticular shape, hovering over the same field area as the last picture. This picture was taken over Canaraville, Utah, by backpacker Steve Thompson, a friend of Joe Clower's, the third member of the original prospecting group. He was hiking in a canyon there near Canaraville in southern Utah when he saw this circular object. He spends about half of his time backpacking in the wilderness areas, and he tells me that he knows he's never alone when he's out there. He's taken about 8 or 9 series of pictures of these objects over these remote areas by himself alone, and this one was one of the recent ones taken in 1994. But a few months later, in January of 1995, that's the same series here. In 1995, he's hiking in the Anza Borrego Desert in California, which is the southernmost desert area bordering on the Mexican frontier, when he looked up and saw this beautiful object. Got a fantastic picture there. He's using a cheap little 35 millimeter Instamatic camera. Here's a picture taken over Pensacola, Florida by a resident who insists on remaining anonymous, who, looking out over the bay, heard a stealth bomber out over the bay. Looking out, he saw a disc-shaped object hovering at low level over the water out there. He didn't know whether the stealth bomber was observing the disc or the disc observing the bomber, but he began taking pictures. He snapped 8 pictures in all. Here's another one, the disc and the bomber in the same picture frame. That's all I put in there of that group. But they continued through a series of 8 pictures. This picture was taken right near here, Scottsdale, Arizona, by Mr. Joe Clower. He's working down here in March of 1995. And he felt the familiar presence, looked up, and saw this object passing over the work site. He went to his car and got his little Polaroid camera and started snapping pictures. There's number 1. If you look closely, you can see an orange blister to the right-hand underside of the flange. There were 3 such orange blisters spaced equally around the underside of the flange there. It was moving slowly across in the sky. He got another picture here, another Polaroid picture. You can see the blister on the left-hand center side on this picture. Snapped another one. Here you can barely see it in the center on the right. He continued to move away. There we can see that it has a dome on the top, a rounded dome that wasn't visible in the other pictures. And he finished, that was the end of that series. He finished the pictures. He finished his work, and going home, he saw the same object again in the evening. Now it's getting dark, it's sunset. The orange domes have become luminous on the bottom side, and he stopped the car and got out and took this one Polaroid picture in the second series that same day. Well, I don't know how those got reversed, but there's the last picture of the first series, and I thought I had them in the right order. Now, the same Joe Clower, a few days later, in March of 1995, is working in the Chandler area, in an industrial area over near Chandler, when he looked up and saw this object, went to his car and got the Polaroid camera and took this one picture of the object at that time. Now, here's another series of pictures that comes from Moscow, from Russia, from Ostenkino, another suburb just outside of Moscow, in October of 1995. In the early evening, on an unrecorded date in 95, these TV cameramen were out on another assignment when they saw this brilliantly luminous object moving in a cloudy sky. And there's 3 men here. One's with the camera. 2 friends are pointing at the object. It began to descend here. You can see, well, the friends are out of the picture in this sequence. Came down to ground level. There's one running towards it. Looked like it touched the ground or came down very near ground level. As they all 3 started running towards it, it ascended into the air again, began to fly away. There's the last picture on. You can see the lines here from the video camera. that was a live motion sequence these pictures were taken from. Here's the last picture that we've made from the stills from the video film of the landing at Ostankino. Now, here's a picture that was made at Salvador de Jujuy in Argentina. Jujuy is the northernmost state in Argentina. This is made on 21 November 1995. And I want you to remember this one. It was made by Hugo Batallanos, and it represents an object that they first observed as the flat black image forms. This one has begun to take on color and shape when he took this picture. But when I finish the series that we're on, I'm going to go into this case a little further. So remember this, you'll see it again when we introduce the new information developing. This next picture was taken over Guayama, Puerto Rico by Jose Maria Fernandez, a contactee who has taken at least 6 different sets of pictures. He has taken pictures. He's a contactee and an abductee also. He has noticed that when he is going to a rendezvous site that there are other contactees that meet him there, that he meets there, sees them for the first time. And then they are taken aboard the spacecraft one at a time by being levitated aboard. And Jose has taken pictures of one of the other contactees ascending into the air, going aboard the ship, and then he handed his camera to another contactee at another time and had him take a picture of him. I don't have all of these in here because it's a long story and it involves a lot of pictures. It involves pictures of at least 4 different kinds of spacecraft. There's one series of pictures of one emerging from the water, and then a second picture shows it fully emerged and a few hundred feet above the water. A second one that came out behind it alongside, and a third one just emerging. But I didn't have time to put them in here, and they're not the sharpest pictures anyway because they're clips from live video film that we'll do another time. This is another of the pictures taken by Jose Maria Fernandez in Puerto Rico. It's a different ship operated by different entities making contact with him there at these times. It's going on today as we sit here. This picture was taken near Denver Airport by Joe Clower, driving his friend Steve Thompson, another one of the 3, to the airport to catch an airplane. This was taken in December of 1995 in the early morning, and as they were approaching the airport, they saw this from the car. They stopped the car, both got out, and Joe Clower took this picture with his little Polaroid camera. This next one is taken by Joe Clower again in North Denver at Spear and Broadway. A neighbor of his had been building a monument for a park, a monument series for a park there at Spear and Broadway, and he was going to put the finishing touches on it for a dedication the following weekend. He asked Joe to go down with him and take pictures of him putting the final touches on the monument, and Joe did, and the fellow is up on a ladder on a monument over here to the right. When this object appeared in the sky, Joe snapped this picture. It's to the left of a very easily identified building there. Then it moved behind the building, and he turned to take the picture of his friend. He saw it come out the other side, waited, and it entered the scene here, and he got the object and his friend putting the final touches on the ball on the top of the monument there. Now, he had witnesses to this. This man in the front hasn't seen it yet. They called the people after they took the pictures, and they stood and watched it, but this was the last of the film in the camera, and he only got those 2. This next series of pictures, if you remember the one that was taken over Honolulu by the young couple from the 12th floor, this is March of 1996, 3 years later to the month, when Pam Randall and her husband, staying in the same hotel on the 4th floor, did the same thing. Just before checkout, the husband stepped to the veranda, the balcony here in front, and snapped a final picture of the skyline, the city skyline at Honolulu. And here you see the lower buildings. You can see the parking garage has been built up on the right-hand side there, now obscuring Waikiki Beach. But it's the same scene 3 years later, and what appears to be the same or a very identical object. This next picture was photographed over Crestone, Colorado, in the spring of 1995 by Joe Clower, who was running his dog in the wilderness area there. When he saw this flying object, he had his camera in the car, grabbed the camera, and took this one picture before it flew away. This next picture was taken at Coacalco in Mexico City on 25 May 96 at 3:03 in the afternoon. Remo Strauss, 25 years old, was in the park taking pictures of a friend's spaniel when the spaniel shied and ran, scurried and ran. Looking around, they usually do this when a hawk is in the sky. Looking around, he saw this object slowly rising, turned his camera and snapped this picture of it. Got another picture as it was ascending and going away, and a third picture, and that was it. Now, we've heard a lot about crop circles. Here's a picture of a crop circle near Telegraph Hill, but notice what's above the crop circle in this particular picture. Either the UFO is interested in a crop circle, or it has something to do with its fabrication or being made, and the witness is there to view the crop circle when the object appears. There was another picture taken over a crop circle just a few days later. The crop circle is a rather unimportant one here. You can barely see it. And in the picture out there to the right is the same shaped dark object moving into the scene. She saw both of these images with her naked eye before she snapped the pictures. This second one here was made at Towsneed Copse in Wiltshire near Avebury. The lady declines to let us use her name. This next series of pictures was made over Sweden, central Sweden, on the 14th of July of 1996. The primary witness, and there are several witnesses in this case, is also a contactee who has been aboard this spacecraft and is still being taken aboard on a sequence of events that's still developing as we sit here. He has taken at least 3 sets of photographs now of the object, that have been aboard it twice that we know of, and maybe have gone aboard again. He and another witness refuse identification and actual location of this event because it's still going on and they don't want it interrupted. Live video footage was also shot during some of these events, and in particular during this particular one that we have the slides of here. Simultaneously, the video film was shot by one witness and the still pictures by another at the same time, and we can see the motion of the object moves rapidly in a rather erratic motion in the sky, which seems to be typical of UFOs, but certainly not airplanes or helicopters or balloons or any other flying objects that we're familiar with. Here's another one of those pictures from Sweden. You can see a little evidence of the flange on the right-hand side there. Here's another one. You can see a little bit of the flange development on the right and the left in this picture. Here's another one. You can still see it a little better here even. That's probably the last one. I believe that was number 6. Here's number 7. This last picture is not too impressive. The object is down here in the lower left-hand corner, made at Ecatepec, Mexico. That's in the Federal District also of Mexico City. On the 21st of July 1996 at 3:30 in the afternoon, an anonymous young photographer saw this object moving in the sky, began taking pictures of it. Here, notice a branch coming into the scene in this particular frame. And here's the next frame with that branch in scene, and the object is ascending beyond it, and we can see it here framed between 2 parts of the branch there. This next picture was photographed over, we got to change the carousel again. So if we can have somebody switch the carousel, and then I'll back it up so that you can get that one out. Photographer? Who's got the carousel? There's another tray of slides right over there. The next pictures were taken at Muchalat Inlet in Nootka Sound off Vancouver Island, British Columbia, in August of 1994. A fisherman, Gary McAllister, with his own fishing boat, was picking up lobster traps off Vancouver Island when he noticed a white lenticular object in the sky slowly descending towards a little island just off the bow of his boat there. And as he watched, it looked like it was going to land on the water. He went below, got his camera, and came back up on deck in time to snap. Is it ready to go? Yeah, go ahead. Came back up on deck in time to snap. Oh, you got the wrong carousel in there. Oh, really? We need the one that's only got half a carousel of slides in it. And he came back up on deck in time to snap pictures of the The object, the white lenticular object that was descending. Okay. Here we have it. Descending towards that little island, he realized as he's taking the pictures that it's beyond the island. He continued to watch, snapped another picture of it with some of the treetops in the foreground, then it descended out of sight behind the island. I find this one interesting because it's very similar in shape and profile to one of the Palladian ships that we saw in photographs of in Switzerland. This picture is one of a series taken over Pacific Palisades, California. It's a beach area, a scrub area of North Palisades Beach. In September of 1996 at about 12:30 noon, again by Mr. Steve Thompson, the backpacker, is up in that area hiking, walking in the area when he feels the presence again, looks around and sees this silvery metallic object, opened his camera and began taking pictures. There's one, here's another, here's another, and there's a final one. He took 4 pictures that day. That's Steve Thompson. Now, the same Steve Thompson, in December of 1996, was backpacking in Bryce Canyon, Utah, a beautiful park area, walking alone with his backpack, his camera, when he feels the presence, looks up and sees this beautiful object in the sky above him. Now, if you notice, we've had a lot of pictures in here by Joe Clower, and the objects are always different. Each event is a different event. Same thing with Steve Thompson. He's taken a number of series of pictures, but the objects are different in each series. And neither one is having contact with the intelligences. They don't know who they are, where they come from, or what's going on. But Steve Thompson took 3 pictures in this series at this time. There's another one. And here's the third one. Now, at our Congress like this in Laughlin, Nevada, last year in December, or this year, early this year in December, in January it actually was, on the 22nd of January, the second day before the end of the Congress, one of our participants, one of our spectators at the Congress, bought a ticket and sat in the crowd just like you are out there. We had a break at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, a half-hour break between presentations for people to rest and get a drink. And she had gone to her room to wash her hands, and she stepped out on the balcony to get a final picture of daylight, because it's going to be dark before she gets back there again, of the scrub area across the river from our hotel, the Green River, or the Gold River Hotel in Laughlin. And as she was framing the desert scene, she saw this object coming into the scene from the right. It was quite a bit closer to her and was flying at an angle away from her across the scene. She snapped this one picture and rolled the film. By the time she could roll the film and snap the second one, it's over about where this little speck of dust is in the scene, and not much bigger than that, going away. So we had to wonder whether we had visitors at our Congress taking the same break and leaving about the same time that she did, going someplace else for some reason, because that was there at that time. Now, this picture, again, is taken by Steve Thompson in early January, a month after the Bryce Canyon, Utah pictures. This is taken in Topanga Canyon, California, just north of where Steve Thompson lives. He's almost in his own backyard. He feels the presence. He's walking out there alone, feels with his camera, feels the presence, looks up and sees the object. He took 3 pictures again. He often takes 3 pictures in a series, and that seems to be enough for him. The pictures are not really important. I don't have the third one in here, but this one was made by Steve Thompson a few days later at Blue Mesa, Arizona, in mid-January, that is, when he was hiking in the area and looked up and saw this object. The same Steve Thompson is back in California at Mount Shasta when he sees this object in the sky, and he took 1 picture here. All of them are silvery domed discs, but they are a little different in style and shape each time. Now, remember that Mike Hawkins, the investigator over in Gulf Breeze, had gone to Roswell for the big meeting there. Liking Roswell, he arranged to buy a small ranchette just out of town, a mile east of Roswell, and he's out inspecting the property that he's interested in. It doesn't include all that you see here. There's just a little house and a garden and a small plot out of scene in the foreground here. When he heard a helicopter. Looking up, he saw first the helicopter, and then he saw a disc that seems to be, the helicopter seems to be interested in the disc. He opened his camera and started taking pictures, and he got that one. Then he got another one here as the helicopter is circling back. He got still a third one here as the helicopter is getting closer to the disc. He said he took 2 more pictures and that he was sending them to me, but they have never arrived, and the letter didn't go back to him. So we don't know where those are at the present time. Now, remember I told you to watch for a picture, this picture here. This is a final stage in a series of pictures made by Joe Batallanos, by Hugo Batallanos and his brothers. They're ethnic Chaco Indians from the Chaco Basin between Paraguay and Argentina, the northernmost Argentine state. They are educated. They've been to college, to the 2 brothers, Hugo and can't remember the other man's name yet. We'll get it in a minute. And they began seeing black, fuzzy objects in the sky. They said, they described it as starting like a hole in the sky. And they look up and they see a little black point that grows in size, then begins to take shape and begins to move about and interact with them. And sometimes the shape begins to take on some color and image quality, as you see here. And here are 2 of them. They look like they could be paintings on watercolor paintings on glass. And at this stage, there's entirely that possibility. But it continued to develop. Here is the black hole in the sky, further developed, showing not only the original hole, but it broke up into little pieces that were flying around independently, separated from the larger one, then went back and rejoined the larger one. This object is entirely light absorbing. Nothing is reflecting from it. We see no detail. Here, another one has separated into a number of pieces that were gyrating around in a circle, all around the center one there. And then they went back together into a single piece. Now, this is all entirely beyond any technology we're familiar with. It all seems like fantasy or miracles, and to us it would be. The occupants of these craft who are in contact with these 2 brothers say that what appears miraculous to us is certainly not miraculous to them, that it all exists within their own technology. Now, here's a craft that they, on request, they densified into, can you lift it back up, into an image, okay, into an image, okay, wait a minute. And if you look close, it looks like if you looked at a very symmetrical, regular object through a layer of water or through ripples on a stream bottom. And so it's not a coherent pattern, and it's very suspicious as it is. We don't know what to make of this, and we don't have any decent evaluation because we have no database on this kind of thing to work from. Here's another picture in that same series. Here it's even casting a shadow on the ground, but it still looks very, very hokey. And it looks unreal because it's not as materially solid as we would expect an airplane to look, for example, or a car. Here's a final picture in that series. And here are the black holes in the sky again. The plasma, we call them black plasma for lack of a better term. We don't know what they are. We haven't the least idea what they're made up of. We only know that they appear as a black point that grows, takes on shape, moves about, sometimes splits, sometimes goes back together. They can become larger or smaller, and the aliens explained to the brothers that size, adjustment of size, or change of form is not anything unusual. It's all entirely within their own technology, and they do it at will and mechanically. It obeys laws of their nature of being. And they gave an example. They said that you have examples of a miniature television screen. In your video camera, you have a half-inch screen. And then you have big screens at football games where they have a 20-foot screen. And they said, if you look at either of them, if you compare them, look very closely, you'll find that all of the image data in the little half-inch screen is also in the big screen. Or all of the image down in the big screen is in the half-inch screen if you zoom it back. So they said our craft respond to to our control in the same form. We can zoom them up to any size we want them, or zoom them down to any size we want them. Nothing changes within the craft. The only change you see is an apparent change in size. And they say that changing shape is something like that, something similar that doesn't really change anything but the shape. And so we're watching the development of this because we don't understand it at all. There's one of the brothers with the blindfolds on to facilitate his meditation. He's meditating, and the things appear during the meditation, and they're taken by another relative with a camera at the time. These black objects started out as pinpoint black holes that grew into those shapes that are now flying around in the sky above his head. Here's another example of the black plasmoid forms. You know, notice that they're fuzzy at the edge. They're like black cloud more than anything else. No detail visible here, but the aliens themselves are trying to improve the manifestation. They say that they come from an other dimensional reality. They don't come here in a linear sense from anywhere. They emerge into our reality from another spectrum of reality and then transcend back out of it again. Here you see an occupant that has descended from one of those plasmoid craft. It's standing in the air, apparently over the heads of the brothers. This one is beginning to take on a little bit of image form in the shape of some color within what looks like black cloudy mass. Here is another one of those forms. It's moving from left to right across the scene. The boys can see these very clearly with their eyes. They take pictures of them. This one is moving behind the bridge. Well, it's passed under the bridge here now. There was a scene in between, a picture in between. See, it's changing form too. It's not exactly the same form every time you see it. Sometimes it can stand on edge. It can turn upside down. It can change its shape to fat or thin. It can also take on some reflective quality, a small amount. Here you see a stage or a phase where it's reflecting light and casting a shadow from the dome. Here's another one of that same series there, and here's a dark one out of the scene at the top. Here's one apparently penetrating the vegetation of a tree, the top of a tree or a vegetated bank there, I think that is, in Huhui province. Here's one of a different kind from a different place. The bow is to your left here, and the aft part of that ship is to the right. It's a narrow triangular ship with a curved dome on the top, and that moves rapidly back and forth. Here the dome is still to the left, and you see it at a different angle where you can see the other points of the triangle or the angular shape. Here you can see some of the curve on the dome on the top, and here's another new type that was photographed by the boys. Notice the power wires are running across the top of the picture there. This thing is approaching from the distance. It's far beyond the telephone lines, making an approach to a point here where in the original print you can see that the wires clearly cross in front of the craft. Now notice the size of the power tower here. That's a full-size tower. There's another one just out of scene to the right, 300 feet away. This is well beyond the tower, so it has to be a very, very large vehicle. And it's flat black, formless flat black. Here it is, another picture. Is it still approaching? The power wires are clearly crossing in front in the photo print. They don't show up too well in the slide here. Here is another form. This is not the same one. This one appeared at the same time, though, from another direction. It looks like a short, fat hat of some kind, and it's slowly descending. It tilted at an angle. Here you can see it lower down. That's quite large, too. It'd be on the order of 60 or 70 feet across the bottom. Here it has launched or dropped another black object from the center of it. Notice some detail filling in along the sides here. It's picking up some color, and here it's picked up more of the color. The other object is still descending, and here is another creature descending from the craft. These creatures float down from the bottoms of these ships. Their arms and legs move as they're descending, so they're not sprayed on glass and held between the camera and the background scene. Here's two of them coming down together. Here's one near the ground. They don't touch the ground. They come down to a few inches above the ground and then slide up to the witness, and they slide back and ascend into the air and rise and go into the bottoms of the ship. Here's one standing here. It's got its arms raised. It is trying to fill in some color to give them more image value, that more than just a flat black non-reflective form. And here you see one going back up into the craft. And I believe that finishes that group. We're having a little conference out in California next weekend with the brothers who have just come up from Argentina. They brought 70-some video clips and over 200 photographs that they have taken for us to evaluate. And Jim and I are going out there to look at their data, look them in the eye, ask them a lot of questions. A strange thing happened 2 days ago. They had a contact in California where they took some more pictures, and they asked the visitors, the extra dimensionals, they mentioned that we were having this little meeting next weekend, and they asked them if it would be possible to put in some kind of an appearance to demonstrate their reality for the group gathered there to study the problem, and those extraterrestrials said they would try to do this. So we're looking forward to possibly an opportunity to see this phenomena ourselves sometime around the end of next week, next Saturday or Sunday, and get a better idea, and hopefully take some pictures with our own cameras that we'll have some data on, and maybe do a little bit better evaluation than we've been able to do with what we've got up to now. So with that, time? Ah. So we finished on schedule, and I'm going to have to turn this back over to Bill, and I'll run that forward so we can get it out of there. Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I'll get my stuff off this. Right here.
Okay. I want to thank Wendel for sharing his slides and all of that tremendous information with us. And we're going to have to move right along here, and I hope you're patient. We have Dave Perkins up next. Dave Perkins, by the way, many of you might not know who he is.